Hello and welcome to another Jay's Politics podcast, part of the Podcast 99 Internet Radio Network. You can reach us at podcast99.org or on the internet at, total glitch, joys of live shows. As I was trying to say, is that you can reach us at podcast99.org to listen to us live on the internet radio, which I'm not doing today. I'm still trying to figure things out on my end here, and hopefully we'll get that all resolved soon. And you can also reach me at jpoliticspodcast@gmail.com or on Twitter at jpolypodcast. So, welcome to another Jay's Politics podcast. It's another episode of This Week in U.S. Politics, episode number 6. So, I've kind of run out of, how to put it. I have not been prepped this week. I have not done what I usually do, which is pick a story or two and follow it and see how it goes. So, I'm going to have to do a, how do I want to put it? Just kind of off the cuff here. I know there's been a lot of going around about various shootings and whatnot, and I really just do not want to cover those without researching and seeing more. Same thing with the Austin bomber. I have not personally followed that story well enough to feel comfortable enough to discuss anything about that. So I figured, what the heck, since this is episode number 6, for no other reason than just being the number 6, and I happen to like it a little bit, I thought I'd do a kind of free-for-all, or go with the flow, and just kind of whatever I find on the internet today, I would discuss. And one of them happens to be a local here in Washington. Not even sure if I want to, but it is what it is. Let's see. Actually, the story I was looking at doesn't even seem like I want to really read it. So let's just go with the national news here. CNN.com. All right. So really, in world of politics, today, what I'm hearing mostly about is Stormy Daniels and the various cabinet secretaries that have been fired or let go, such as Secretary of State. And I just don't really want to go that way. I don't want to talk about those things. We can go with something that happened yesterday. Rick Santorum talking about the student protests, and how he wants protesting students to learn CPR instead, or how kids want someone else to solve their problems. Kind of a general misnomer of millennials these days is that they want all their problems solved for them and want no accountable action held to them. And I don't find that that's necessarily true. I work with millennials in my job, and yes, some of them are lazy and just don't care. There are others that do bust their butt and want to get their job done and done right. So basically, it comes back to another issue of stigmas. We, the older generation, attach a stigma to the younger generation. Just like the generation of the baby boomers, when they got older in the 60s and 70s, they were, hippies and negative connotations of that. Excuse me. Then you got the Gen Xers who rebelled and all this other stuff, Then you have my generation, the generation between Gen Xer and millennials. And then you have the millennials. And it's just, why do we feel the need to label people? So let's see what CNN has to say about Santorum and the protesting students. All right. So, and I've got my volume turned down on my laptop, so it's going into the mixer. It's not going to come out. and be heard. And I'm going to bypass their video. Come on, CNN, stop it. All right. The joys of using other people's stuff without. CNN commentator and former Pennsylvania GOP Senator Rick Santorum on Sunday suggested students protesting for gun control legislation would be better served by taking CPR classes and preparing for an active shooter scenarios. Yes and no. They can learn CPR on other time besides the time they decided to protest. The thing is that the children, teenagers, and the like feel like they're not being protected enough by the laws of this land. They feel like they're not being protected enough by the adults that are supposed to be protecting them, i.e., their parents, their city and state governments, as well as the federal government. Never mind the school districts and things like that. In our haste to protect people from gun violence after Columbine, we converted a lot of schools into gun-free zones. Sometimes even before that, we had gun-free zones. Going to such a small school that I did, it wasn't uncommon for kids to have their hunting rifles and during hunting season in the trunks of their cars or even in the cab of their truck, usually out of the window, out of sight, no harm, no foul. None of us feared that these kids were going to come in and shoot us, but yet I had a classmate of mine suspended for this very reason. He was opening up his trunk to get his football pads, and his gun was visible at that time to a passing by staffer, and that person basically muscled her way into getting him expelled from the school, and he ended up graduating via homeschool, basically through correspondence courses. Did that really need to happen? I don't think so. I don't know the full story behind it, and I never will know, nor do I care to know. All I know is that he was kicked out because he had a gun on a school, which was a gun-free zone. Even when I went there, it was a gun-free zone. However, I felt safer with those people who had their hunting rifles and stuff out there because I knew they knew how to use them. And as I've learned to handle weapons, I'd feel more confident in me holding a firearm than say somebody who doesn't really want to, things like that. Anyways, going back to what Rick Santorum said is that, quote, how about kids instead of looking to someone else to solve that problem, and do something about maybe taking CPR classes or trying to deal with situations when there is a violent shooter that you can actually respond to that. Santorum said today on CNN's State of the Union show. Again, the whole gun control issue, the whole issue with guns is that, yes, we do have the Second Amendment right. We do have the right to bear arms, to keep and bear arms. But at what point does our rights as citizens to keep and bear arms infringe upon those others for safety? Now, I know many of you are going to say that having some people have guns makes the world a safer place, and I get that. I understand that. And I even respect that point of view. But at the same time, for those people that are not comfortable around weapons, that are not comfortable around those things, why should they be forced to have those around? For example, in my own household, I would love to have a small arm for protection of my family. But people in my household don't like the idea of a weapon in the house. Now, that was mainly when we had younger nieces and nephews. But still, to this day, I still have not yet gone and gotten a small arm, a small pistol, or anything to defend this house. Doesn't mean I don't have other ways of doing it, but I respect my family's wishes to not have a weapon in the house of a firearm, the right to keep a gun. So it's not that big of a deal for me not to have one. If it was, I wouldn't be in this relationship that I am. Now, for those of you that think that for those of you that think that I'm kowtowing to somebody who doesn't want me to have the, the right to own a weapon, it's not that. Again, like I said, it was mainly because at the time that I was considering getting one, we were one living in an apartment with very thin walls, with children next door to us, small children. Plus, we also had our nieces and nephews that were small. It makes sense for me not to have one where they can readily get to it, but also in an apartment, it's not exactly the securest thing to keep something locked up in, even if I had a safe or anything like that. The idea that these people telling these children not to express their First Amendment right is crazy. Just as much as Dave pointed out in his show on Friday, that people who are wanting to suppress gun rights are using their First Amendment right to try and get people to um, trying to get the people to not have the right to have guns or control it, curb it. I personally would much rather feel comfortable with people having their weapons, but at the same time, sorry, our friend just left, so the dogs are going off. If you hear that, I don't know if you are or not. Um, but long story short, I feel that people should have the right to have guns, but also they have to be responsible for the use of their weapon, and that if they're going to resell that weapon, they need to have a background check on the person they're selling it to. So, anyways, Santorum's comments came a day after protesters assembled at the March for Our Lives events in Washington and across the country to demand gun control legislation in the wake of the deadly school shooting at Parkland, Florida. Santorum dismisses the usefulness of, quote, phony gun laws, unquote, and appeared to call on students and others to improve their communities and prepare to respond to further shootings instead of calling for new laws. Again, Santorum and most people who are adamantly pro-gun, pro-Second Amendment, think that these gun control laws are trying to strip them of their right to have a gun, and they are not. Do some go excessively overboard in the way they want to control guns? Yes. I don't think that anybody really needs to have an AR-15 style rifle, but as long as it's not illegal to own one, have at it. Just, you know, make sure that it's in a place that can't be stolen from or used by somebody that's not experienced in using it. Second of all, it's just boggles the mind that, people think that they need to have things such as AR-15s and other weapons, or even things like bump stocks, to as part of their Second Amendment right. And and I'm not saying that we shouldn't be able to defend ourselves against our own government if for whatever reason they decide somebody gets in the office and decides to become a dictator of some sort and use the military or the police to round people up. You know, people often talk about the atrocities um, that the Nazis committed. Look at what we did in our own history with the Japanese internment camps that we had. You know, we treated them less than humans. I mean, George Takei, famous actor that actually lived through that. So it's one of those things that we do need some sort of gun control, some sort of responsibility for the people who own the guns, and a way of checking for if people should have guns. If you're not mentally stable, you have no business owning a firearm at all, whatsoever. And that is my opinion. I'm not saying that as fact. I'm stating that as my opinion. You should not own a weapon at all because you might use it in a way that is, while its intended purpose to kill things, kill people, is not the solution to the problem. What you need is to get help. I know many people bring up when it comes to gun control, countries that don't allow their citizens to be armed, or at least don't allow them to be armed in the way that we in the U.S. are. And they point to them in a false flag, in my opinion, a false argument point, because they're not factoring in one thing that these countries do that that the United States doesn't have. As generally, they have a form of universal health care. They have a way of getting these people the mental and physical help that they need to deal with situations. It's not just pump them full of drugs at expenses that they can't afford, and then when they get off their drugs, they have they go on a spree. No, they actually keep these people and help them get the help that they need. Now, yes, there are still people who manage to get things in these countries to cause harm, but it doesn't mean that it's, as rampant as our media portrays it to be. And that's the other thing about this whole thing is the way that our media portrays these events. Here I am talking about a protest that isn't relation to the shooting, and we make it an us versus them. This is not what our country needs. What we need is a sit down of all parties and be like, look, we want this, but you have to be willing to budge on this. And the other side has to come up, well, we'll budge on that if you're willing to budge on this other factor. Compromise is one of those things that everybody's going to have a bad taste in their mouth. And that's the best way to have it, because we are not ideally going to have everybody agree on everything when it comes to things. Going back to this article, Santorum quote, they took action to ask someone to pass a law. They didn't take action to say, how do I, as an individual, deal with this problem? How am I going to do something about stopping bullying within my own community? What am I going to do to actually help respond to a shooter? Those are the kind of things where you can take you can take it internally and say, here's how I'm going to deal with this and how I'm going to help this situation, instead of going and protesting, say, oh, someone needs to pass a law to protect me. End quote. That's one thing that gets me, is it's not so much that these people are saying, I want you to protect me, as it is somebody saying, look, I want you to protect me, but I also, should do this. This is one of those things where it comes to the compromise point. Yes, we need to pass laws to help protect our citizens. Yes, we need to help protect our citizens from being involved in situations like this. They also need to take responsibility and deal with situations appropriately as well. Talking about bullying here. Kids get bullied all the time, every day around this country and probably around the world. I don't know about other cultures, how they deal with bullying. But here in the United States, it's pretty much, it's been the longest time, if you're getting bullied, deal with it, or, get it over with. And by get it over with, I mean people committing suicide. And that's not what we need. We need to take these bullies aside and find out what's causing them to bully. Is it a bad relationship at home with a parent? Is it an abusive family member that's taking care of them? Is it somebody else in their life making life miserable because maybe they have a learning disability that hasn't been diagnosed yet? Or maybe they're lashing out because of whatever other reason. The point is we have to help these people to help themselves. But we also have to help everybody in general. So, Van Jones, a liberal CNN commentator, interjected and mentioned his own child was about to start high school. Quote, I want him to focus on algebra and other stuff, said Jones. If his main way to survive high school is to learn CPR, so when his friends get shot, that to me, we have gone too far. I'm proud of these kids, and I know you're proud of these kids too. End quote. Santorum responded by continuing to knock gun control efforts. Quote, I am proud of them, he said, but I think everyone should be responsible and deal with the problems that we have to confront in our lives. And ignoring those problems and saying they're not going to come to me and say some phony gun law is going to solve it. Phony gun laws don't solve these problems, end quote. Again, Rick Santorum falling back on the basic philosophy of individuals are responsible for themselves. And it's true. We are responsible for ourselves. We have nobody to blame in our lives for situations unless there is an actual instance. Like I say I get into a car wreck. That's not my fault. I get T-boned because somebody's drunk and running a red light and I didn't see them. That's not my fault. That's the other person's fault. But how I deal with that situation after the fact is my responsibility. It is my prerogative. I can continue to blame the person and blame the city for not city, state, country for whatever reason for pulling them pulling it back, or pulling their license. That's what I'm trying to say. Sorry, I'm hearing some stuff outside and sounds like it's bleeding through on my mic, but I can't tell. Anyways, I want to just today kind of closing on this topic, and hopefully this will be the last time I have to talk about this high school shooting, is that we need as a society to find that balance on what are we going to do to help the students and the teachers to be able to deal with these situations, to deal with these people coming in and shooting them, because obviously calling a gun-free zone doesn't stop anybody from doing anything. But at the same time, we need to understand that there needs to be some measure of support for the people that are causing these incidents. We need to get them the help that they need. And if that means as a taxpayer, I have to pay more in taxes to provide basic mental health care to people to make sure that they can get the help they need and not go bankrupt for it, then that's what we need to do. Now, I know my conservative friends and family out there are just like, what did he just say? Universal health care? No, we can't do that. That'll bankrupt the system. No, it won't. We need to help our people out, not just the pocketbooks of the medical industry, We need to help. We just need to help everybody. And the problem is we're not willing to help anybody. It's the famous quote from the Bible, give a man a fish, he eats for a day, teach a man to fish, he can eat the rest of his life, That's kind of where the universal healthcare system comes in. If we can help each other, help ourselves, we can solve many of these problems, or at least curb many of these problems. Some of you might think that I'm naive and I don't know what I'm talking about. That's fine, because this here is my opinion and it is my right to put it out here. But at the same time, I hope that you pause for a moment and listen. That I'm not trying to say that it's the solution to all of the problems, but it is helpful in the solutions of the problems that we're dealing with. A lot of these shooters, when they go back and examine their lives, especially in the media, we see that they had some incident that triggered them. And it's either they want to, have their 15 minutes of fame and, go down a destructive path like that, or they themselves will just commit suicide. And to all of us, that should be abhorrent. We should not want that. We should want to help these people. We should want to get them the help that they need. And if it means that we have to pay a little bit more in our taxes, or even a lot more, to fund the system, then let's do it. I mean, heck, we're halfway there with our universal health care. We get the Medicare program, and that's not even close to working yet. We have examples all over the world in first world countries where universal health care works, their economies are stable, and yet we're the ones behind, and we're the ones that are rigidly holding on to a system that doesn't work for everybody. Because if I can't get a job, I don't get health care. If I can't, you know, if I can't afford to pay copays, or if I can't afford to get a procedure done, that could be, even if it's just something minor, but that's part of an everyday, healthy lifestyle, such as a physical. Let's see, what is this, 2018? I haven't had one since 2004, August 2004, because I can't afford those things, you know? Oh, but under the Affordable Care Act, I could have gotten free physicals. Yep, until they find something wrong. Then that physical becomes a medical exam instead of a physical. And guess what? Don't have the money. Now, yes, I have a job that's not exactly the most upwardly mobile, but I'm going to school to trying to resolve that. I'm also applying for other jobs that do pay more for not a lot of education. Fine. Once I can get one of those, yeah, I'll turn around and get a job. I'll turn around and get those benefits used. But it's the point of the matter is we have to look at more than just gun control laws. We also have to look at why these people do this and try and find somewhere in the middle where we do have some sort of gun control law that relies upon responsible selling and reselling of weapons, liability on those that own the guns if something happens to their guns, like stolen from a family member, or I should say stolen by a family member, or even going as far as if it's reported stolen, if you don't report it stolen when your house is robbed or your work is robbed or wherever your weapon happens to be, and getting it out there. I mean, we're not talking like the exact instant, but if you can get that, say, call 911, hey, my car's broken into, my, gun is this, and keep a copy of the serial number on it. So that way they can say, okay, it's done. And that way, if they find your gun and involved in a crime later, that where the serial number was filed off, they could at least say he reported it when he reported his car was robbed, or she, or whoever, things like that. Kind of gotten off topic there. But Rick Santorum's entitled to his opinion, and for the part of it, I do agree. We do need, as teachers, students, the American citizenry, to own up to our own individual responsibilities. But at the same time, we also have communal responsibilities, not just on a local level, but on a federal level that we have not been getting done. Another thing, um, kind of speaking on this, the omnibus spending bill has been passed, and it's only good till September, and here it is, the end of March. So that's what, 5 months roughly, 6 months of you know of approved spending for the federal government. Yay! What was it? 1.3 trillion, 1.7 trillion, something like that. Oh gosh, whole the whole thing about that is just, I don't know. It just rubs me the wrong way that we have not had an actual budget passed in goodness knows how many years we have had. Let's see here. Trying to pull up something here really quick. Live control room. For some reason lately, my chats have not been working, so I don't know if people are actually talking to me or not, but I'm assuming they are. And let's go with delete that and pop that one out. Okay, so I don't have anybody chatting with me yet, but that's fine. Eventually I will. And so let's go and look up the whole budget, the omnibus spending bill. Omnibus All right. So I'll go to BBC News, and this is just pure politics, the pure dog and pony show that is the U.S. politics system, especially on the federal level. Earlier this week, President Trump threatened to veto the $1.3 trillion spending bill because it does not address DACA and it does not fund his border wall. So, what does that mean? What does that mean to us? Well, in the end, he, for lack of a better term, caved because he didn't want the federal government shutting down being on his head. And anyways, the point of that is it's we need Congress to do what they say they're going to do. We need them to do what they're supposed to do. Let's see here. I'm actually going to go look something else up here really quick. But, you know, I think honestly that if Congress can't pass a budget this year, everybody, all 535 members that are, it's midterms, so all the seats that are up get challenged. All of them. Let's see here. Last time U.S. Congress passed the budget. Oh, Washington Post. Let's check it out. All right, let's see here. All right, let's see here. All right, when was the last time they actually passed the budget? Trying to find sources, and it's just on the fly is not even. Yeah, it's not even fun sometimes. Oh, here we go. According to weeklystandards.com blogs slash 136 days 130 1360 days dash last dash budget underscore 696321.html. The last time the Senate passed a budget was April 29th, 2019. And let's see here. Oh, Congress passed its first budget in 6 years in May 2015. That's just it. Even if 2015 was the last time, that's now going on 2 years without a budget, going on to 3 years without a budget. If they don't pass a budget by September 30th. Why can't we pass a budget as a country? Why can we not? Don't tell me it's little things like social programs that barely take up any of the budget at all. Because if that's the case, you're hanging up over, $1.4 million or whatever the number is of a social program versus the trillions of dollars that our budget is currently or that we're spending right now. That's not an excuse for fudging a budget or not getting a budget done. I can I say this? I'm not the most fiscally responsible person in the world. There are times where I've been like, yeah, I can do this. Oh crap! Now I need to do this, and I don't have the money for it. There are things where it's like, okay, if I can't do it, then I can't do it. But I at least try to, make sure that I plan ahead for things. And we as a society, there's another meme, another running joke. Well, dear Congress, since you have failed to pass another budget this year, I'm gonna forgo paying my taxes, because if you can get away with not budgeting and paying for things, then I can get away with not paying my taxes. Stupid meme, I get it, but it's kind of funny. Just I'm waiting for somebody to actually try and pull this with the IRS. Be like, look, if my representatives are not doing their job that I send them there to, that I pay them to do, then why should I pay them? Seems like a pretty sound argument, if you're going to get paid not to work, then why should I pay you? If you think you deserve to get paid for not working, for not doing your job, not getting your stuff done, then why should I pay you? I mean, if I sat around at my job and just bickered with my boss about getting stuff done, or bickered with my coworkers about getting stuff done, my boss would fire me in a heartbeat for not doing my job. And why don't we do this as Americans? Why don't we do this for our politicians? Oh, that's right. We have lobbyists who fund these guys, because it's like, oh, hey, you got me this cushy little contract. You got me this nice little plot of land that I was looking for, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And these bills that don't really mean a hill of beans to the basics of running our country. The basics of running our country are the Senate and the House will pass a budget. As a matter of fact, the president submits a budget, but you still prove what you want to do, and he has to sign it. And if it's a budget that you guys want, you can just override it. Override his veto. But you sit there as Congress people, as members of Congress, senators, congressmen and women, representatives, whatever terms you would like to use. But you sit there and argue with us, citizens, about getting a budget done, and you're always telling us it's this other party's fault, or it's the other party's fault, or it's this group of people, it's this caucus, the Freedom Caucus, or whatever, about trivial, in the grand schemes of your budget, trivial matters. We don't want to fund Planned Parenthood because they perform abortions. Yet, if you go and look up Planned Parenthood's funding from the federal government, I believe that the contract actually states that they cannot use any of their federally granted money to perform those abortions. Those abortions are all performed by donations from people. People try to say that Planned Parenthood does evil things, and yet the facts don't always come out the way that these people try to represent it. So it's, my brain hurts thinking about it. It's just one of those situations where it's like, we as the citizenry, again, need to come together collectively, and if they do not pass a budget by the due date, and I'm not talking passing it October 1st, I'm talking about having a budget passed by September 30th, before the start of the next fiscal year, because the election's just a month away at that point, basically, we vote everybody out that's due. All of the House of Representatives, gone. All the, I think it's tier 3 senators that are running for re-election, gone. You know why? Because you're not doing your job. I mean, honestly, the the point of us having you there is to represent us, the people. And yes, I am well aware of how my conservative friends and families feel about Planned Parenthood. I understand that they have their moral values rooted in their religious beliefs, and that is fine. That is for them to live by. But we are a nation that has a freedom of religion. Ergo, a freedom from religion as well. We have a separation of church and state just in general, because we didn't want things to be run like most of Europe, either in control of the Vatican eh, or by the Church of England or whatever Protestant church was the main church in the region. So religious matters should not weigh into the fact of certain laws. It should also not hang up a budget. Do I think we're spending too much in the military as as a veteran? Yes and no. I think we're spending too much on technology that doesn't need to necessarily be improved entirely. I also think some of the government contracts that are given out for things are spent in the wrong way. But we definitely need to turn around some of that spending on the military and put it back into the people. Just like Dave says on his show. You know, him and I don't agree on everything, but when it comes to military spending, a large portion of that should be going to the servicemen and women, whether it be active duty, reserves, National Guard, retirees, medically discharged retirees, things like that. That's where we should be spending it. I mean, yes, we do need to build new ships. Still need to build new tanks, new armored personnel carriers. I'm not naive to think that we don't need those things, and I'm not saying that it's 90% of the military budget goes to the personnel. I'm not saying that's where we're putting all the money on is on the equipment at 99%. Whatever the case may be, I think it needs to be closer to a way that we can do it. I wonder if I can Google that right now. Where is that? All right. Breakdown of military holiday spending in the U.S. Business Insider, and this is an article from 2015, so I don't know. It all depends on how much. Yeah, I'm not going to go to Wikipedia. Wikipedia is nice, great, but too many people can have their fingers in it. It doesn't necessarily. Heck, I'll go to it. It doesn't necessarily show what we really need it to. All right. So, military budget. Let's see here. Let's see. I want. All right. So, total budget. Operations and maintenance is, and we'll go with the 2016 numbers here. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to share my screen with you just so you can see what I'm looking at on Wikipedia. And a link will be in the comments down below and on my show notes for this. That's an interesting program. Okay. So as you can see here, this is what the military personnel is getting. This is what operations and maintenance is getting. This is the procurement, research and development, revolving management funds, military construction, and family housing. So I will add family housing into the military personnel, just so that way we can see it. And then where is my calculator? Yeah, let's go. Scroll way past that. Calculator. Yeah. I believe all this that you're seeing is that page. Yeah. So let's go. And I'm going to present this to everyone so it shows better. Anyways. Let's pull that back up here. All right. So we have 138,000 552,886,000,000. I'm assuming. I'm assuming. Oh, this is in thousands, so that must mean this is 1 point. Okay. So, I like how they make this so. Right. Plus 1,261,288,000. Because again, these are amounts in thousands, so I need to add 3 more zeros to the end of it. So that's for a total of $139,814,174,000 of the total budget. Okay, so I'm gonna jot that down in Notepad really quick. Windows. These things, things I think of off the fly here. Again, this is totally doing a freelance type of way of doing this. So 139 billion, 14 million, 174. Okay. We're going to go back to this, open up the calculator, and we're going to clear. All right. So actually, I should have just left that up there. Right, that's what it was. So then divide that by 580,299,684,000. 23.92% of our budget is spent on military personnel. And again, this is, ballpark figures. This doesn't factor in any black ops type of things like that. So this was for the fiscal year 2016. So 23% of our budget for our military is 24% of our budget for our military is going to the military personnel. Okay. So clear this out. Operations and maintenance, the big part of the budget, the meat and potatoes of the budget, one would say. And this is all the deployments of personnel to war zones, the costs of maintaining the ships and equipment, things like that. And again, this is military wide, not just the Navy. This is everything. 244,439. Sorry, 244,434,932,000. Okay, divide that 580,299,684,000. 42.12. So nearly half of our budget on the actual operations. So that's for all the kit, that's for all the body armor, everything. That's all going to the military personnel to use for these operations, for the maintenance of the equipment, etc. Some of this is for special materials, things that have been pressure rated, things that pass quality assurance. For a submarine, I don't want anything that's not going to be able to withstand the pressures that we're at. They're not going to be able to handle the temperature differences because there's a difference between tropical waters and North Pacific, North Atlantic waters. Um, there's maintaining them, putting them into dry dock for refits and other maintenance activities that require dry docking, uh, tanks, things like that. Replacement of things that get shot down as far as aircraft go. Tanks get blown up on a battlefield. IEDs for roadside vehicles, things like that. We've got to find a way of redistributing, rebalancing that. I mean, I have no problem with operational maintenance being nearly half if not slightly more than half of the budget. But unfortunately, if I were to really factor that in, the the military personnel and family housing is the only two that relate to military personnel, and all the rest of this can go into basic operations, which means that instead of 42.12%, it's actually, what did I say, 23.92, so that's 70 76.18% of the military budget. That's how far and wide is what's spent on our military personnel. We care more about the equipment, more about the stuff than our personnel. And I'm not saying a huge drastic cut of that 70, what did I say? 76% to 3/4 of our budget. Scale it down, make it a 2/3 to 1/3 split. I'm not asking for a huge change. Well, actually, that would be a huge change. But I'm not talking like a huge drastic change that brings it closer to a 50-50. Because I understand how much equipment we have out there, how much we have going for us. You know, Congress needs to pull their collective heads out of their rears and get on actually budgeting out the federal government. They've passed the legislation for the post office to fund their retirement plan. Well, the post office pretty much funds the post office funds itself through the sales of your stamps and shipping that you get via the mail, like through Amazon or name vendor here, whatever. The point is, the federal government needs to be able to do that with our tax dollars responsibly. How about instead of raising the compensation for congressmen, senators, the executive staff? I don't even know if they've raised the I don't know if they've even raised the salaries of the chief justices or any of the federal courts. That's not the point. Stop worrying about taking care of yourselves and worry about taking care of the people who pay for you to be there. Like I said, I'm calling on every listener here, anybody who's ever watched or listened to any of my stuff. If if you are like me and you want to see we'll worry about a balanced budget future. But if you want to see Congress actually pass a budget every year, then we need to hold them accountable, which means we need to have them pass a budget before the election. If they don't pass a budget and they're running for re-election, they're gone. I mean, I would love to be able to run for office. I wish I had the money and the backing of my community to do that. But you can't make change if you don't change everything that there is about it. People talk about going to Washington to drain the swamp or fix a problem when it comes to the federal government, but they don't realize that how big of a task that is, how ingrained our system is. That if you wanted to go to Washington and change it, you would have to basically take all of the entire sitting Congress and get rid of it and start fresh. Well, the lobbyists are not going to allow you to do that. The lobbyists are not going to allow any of their prides and joy to get swept out of office. And if they do get swept out of office, they're going to find somebody else to run in the next election. But the point is we as a nation need to hold the government responsible to us. They work for us, not us working for them, even if you are a federal employee. Our taxpayer dollars need to represent what we want, what we're looking for in our society. So, like I said, I did not have an actual plan for this today. I just lost track of time over the week. So, here's an hour with me just rambling. I had no outline, no nothing, and I'm trying to get better about doing that. But between work and school and trying to do this, for whatever reason, I dropped the ball on this of all things. So, this has been another This Week in U.S. Politics. This is episode number 6, and you can check us out. Wow, I can't even speak today. We're going to try this all over again. Welcome to, I would like to say thank you for watching and listening to Jay's Politics Podcast, part of the Podcast 99 Internet Radio Network. You can reach us at podcast99.org or reach me directly at jayspoliticspodcast@gmail.com or me directly on Twitter at jpolispodcast. So, thank you again for watching. Sorry this isn't on a Saturday, this is actually on a Sunday, but I just had things to do yesterday. I'll be back again Saturday, because I'm off, to do another This Week in Politics. Have a wonderful week, and remember, your government works for you, not the other way around.